Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. U.S. immigration agents shoot and kill a U.S. citizen in Minneapolis, sparking protests and condemnation from local leaders. The Department of Homeland Security says an agent fired in self-defense after the man approached with a handgun and resisted disarmament. Minnesota state investigators say federal agents refused to let them enter the Minneapolis shooting site despite a judge-signed warrant, deepening tension over immigration officer action. The refusal comes as local leaders push for independent review of federal actions after multiple fatal shootings in the city this month. Today, Finland's Prime Minister Petteri Orpo begins a 4-day visit to China with a large business delegation. Orpo is the second EU leader to visit China in just 3 weeks and the first Finnish Prime Minister to do so since 2017 amid geopolitical constraints. Myanmar's military chief defends the election as final voting takes place, with the military-backed party already holding large parliamentary majorities. Major opposition groups boycott the polls, while the UN and rights groups denounce the vote as a sham to entrench military rule. Russian and Ukrainian officials hold constructive talks in the UAE on possible parameters to end the war. Negotiators agreed to report back to their capitals and return for another round on February 1st. Donald Trump threatens a 100% tariff on all Canadian goods if Ottawa strikes a trade deal with China. The warning comes as US-Canada ties strain after Canada announces a strategic partnership with Beijing. Swiss President Guy Parmelin says Italy's outrage over the release of the bar owner involved in a deadly fire is understandable. However, he has emphasized that Swiss magistrates act independently in such matters. A major U.S. winter storm leaves more than 230,000 without power and triggers thousands of flight cancellations. Federal emergencies are declared in multiple states as forecasters warn of dangerous cold and heavy snow. Now, we start this hour with U.S. Alex Perty, a 37-year-old nurse who was shot and killed by federal immigration agents yesterday in January 24th in Minneapolis. The Department of Homeland Security said the agents fired in self-defense after Perty, who they say had a handgun, resisted their attempts to disarm him. Eyewitnesses, local officials, and the victim's family have challenged that account, pointing out that he had a phone in his hand, not a weapon. This was the second shooting by federal agents in Minneapolis this month. Perty was shot about 1 mile from the spot where an ICE officer killed 37-year-old Renee Good on January 7. Similar to the recent Perty shooting, officials claim that the shooting of Renee was an act of self-defense by federal agents. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has stated in regard to the shooting that Good had tried to weaponize her vehicle to run over an ICE officer which struck on a snow-lined street before he opened fire. Children have also been targeted in the immigration crackdown in Minneapolis. According to reports this week, a 2-year-old girl and her father were taken by ICE agents. Elvis Jewel Tipan Echeverria and his 2-year-old daughter, Chloe Renata Tipan Villasis, were taken in South Minneapolis in their way home from the grocery store. ICE agents also detained a 5-year-old boy named Liam Conejo Ramos this week. Later, the Department of Homeland Security and other U.S. officials have stated that they had not targeted the child. They stated that the operation was conducted against the child's father, whom the DHS referred to as an illegal alien. Meanwhile, protests have erupted in Minnesota demanding ICE agents to leave the state. Armed and masked agents have clashed with the protesters in the state using tear gas and stun grenades to disperse them from the area. Now for this discussion, we welcome Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee. She's a former Indian ambassador, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, what's going on that, two accounts of such cases we have seen this month, and do you think there is abuse of power by the ICE agents, and how do you think government should, or the state should, balance protecting citizens while enforcing such?
Thank you for having me in your show.
Thank you.
I was just trying to recall, since both United States and India are large federal countries,
Yes.
in a federal state, there is a division of powers between the center and the states. That's true in the United States. It's true in India. In these kind of situations, for instance, involving law and order or illegal immigration, in India, for example, there are clearly set out rules that you have to warn the victim. If you shoot, you don't shoot to kill, you shoot at the feet below, so that the victim has had survived but can be captured in case the victim is aggressive or is resisting arrest or is perceived by the law enforcement authority as a danger to the agent's life. In both these cases, whether it was Rene or yesterday's incident, it would appear that there is I don't know the facts, so I can't call it a deliberate misunderstanding, but there would appear to be a serious misunderstanding between the person who was supposed to be apprehended as an illegal immigrant and what he or she was carrying, or which could be perceived to be a threat. In Rene's case, she was not carrying anything. It was alleged that she was trying to run them over. In this particular case, he was apparently not carrying a weapon, but the agent thought that he was carrying a weapon. Under those circumstances, there is a clear standoff between the ICE agents and the local authorities, which in a federation should not happen, because in a federation and in a country under rule of law like United States or like India, there are clearly laid out guidelines on how such situations should be handled. In this particular case, United States, as the world's longest democracy, we are the world's largest democracy, um, is actually, in my perception, with these kind of incidents, giving an erroneous example that it's heading towards some kind of, not civil war, but civil conflict between state and federal authorities, which should not happen at all, and that the Republicans who are in power are deliberately targeting Democrats who are in power in different states. Uh, Perhaps that's exaggerated, but if you look at the breakup of where the ICE agents are going, they are going into places run by Democrats. But there should not be this kind of politics, because human lives are at stake. And I really wonder if the Republican Party, the MAGA group particularly, understand that United States was made from immigrants who made America great. It was immigrants who came and planted the flag, because Trump was talking about white people planting a flag in Greenland, but there were white people who came and planted a flag in what was then indigenous territory and became United States. And to pick out immigrants in such a brutal manner and single them out, um, and often resulting in them being shot dead, uh, is something which sends a completely wrong impression about the condition of law and order, of the state of xenophobia or racism in the United States. It certainly makes most people, young people, including in India, think 100 times before going to the United States, because right now the atmosphere is so vitiated. There's so much of violence. There's so much of hatred against non-white people, against non-white, because Trump says he wants the United States to be a white and Christian country. Uh, there is a completely distorted perception now of what America means to the rest of the world. In which case, if there is a very sharp drop, and there is a very sharp drop, for example, of students, etc., going from India to US, they're going to other destinations, it will impact the American economy, because the American economy needs these people to run the less popular jobs for them in some cases, and also the very high-tech jobs for them where they don't have those qualified people, and they all come from places like India, etc. So this is going to have a very devastating effect on the on US's economy and GDP growth in the middle and long term. Uh, of course, Trump would have finished his term by then and moved on, so maybe
Yes.
his successor would be able to do the necessary reparations. But right now, if I speak to young, highly qualified Indians and ask them, they say anywhere, ma'am, except United States,
Yes.
because these kind of actions have make people like us. We've been colonized for 180 years by white people. Now we see white people perpetuating such terrible human rights violations on non-white people, saying they're illegal immigrants. It can't be so difficult to round up illegal immigrants and send them home. They sent so many illegal Indian immigrants on a flight, shackled, bound. It would cause outrage in public opinion in India, including women, including a pregnant woman was shackled and bound. It's a very long flight. I've done it many times, non-stop from New York City to Delhi. Shackled and bound except to go to the toilet. I think it's a terrible way to treat human beings. And I would
Yes.
advise through your channel, all young Indians, please do not go to Trump's United States until he's safely finished his second term. Thank you.
Yes, and Ambassador, as you know, you have already highlighted all the short-term effects of this. How do you think what could be the long-term effects, and how do you think it would affect U.S.'s reputation, especially in human rights and adherence to rule and law principles?
Well, the United States under Mr. Trump has already partially dismantled the global order which was put together by United States after World War II. They have partially destroyed the UN and its highly competent specialized agencies like WTO, WHO. Now they want to build up. Now Trump wants a, a security council with only him as the veto. That's the Gaza Peace Board, for example. And a country that was looked up to by the entire world as a champion of freedom, democracy, freedom of movement, the land of opportunity, the land of dreams. Where has that come to now? That is why I'm saying that such incidents which are played out not just on American television but all over the world, globally, is sending this terrible image that United States has diminished itself. This is a diminished United States. This is not the United States which held up the world order. This is not the United States that other countries, including my country, India, looked up to. What has happened to that United States? Where has it gone? And what is happening in Minneapolis is that the other part of the United States, which does not want that to go, is fighting back. Therefore, it's not going to be so easy to completely change United States because there are Americans there who firmly believe in what I've outlined and they are fighting back. In which case, you could find not a civil war, but more and more conflicts of this kind waged by Americans who believe that their basic values are being trampled upon, and by Americans who believe, for instance, that the so-called illegal immigrant is not an illegal immigrant, has the right to stay, has the correct papers, is not being given the opportunity to show the papers, or is being threatened or menaced in such a way that the person wants to run away because he or she feels that their life is in danger. The moment they try and run away, they're shot dead. I mean, I ask myself, what would they do then in a situation like we had in 1971 when 10 million East Pakistanis crossed the border and stayed in West Bengal for 1.5 years until Bangladesh was liberated? What did we do? We took no help. We gave them shelter, food. 10 million people in a very poor country it was, 1971, India. We allowed them in and then they went back. This is not the
Yes.
way to treat people. These are human beings, and it was the
Yes.
United States whose First Lady, Mrs. Roosevelt, is the person who painstakingly set up the preamble of UNESCO Charter, which says that because wars begin in the minds of men, it's
Yes.
in the minds of men that the defenses of peace have to be created. That's
Thank you
the
very
United
much.
States that I have respect for. I hope that United States comes back soon, because otherwise I'm not going anywhere near it, Asuma.
Right. Thank you for highlighting that, and great learning from you, Ambassador Mukherjee, and sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Now we move on to Russia and Ukraine. Russia's military is closely watching U.S. plans for the Golden Dome missile defense shield, especially in relation to Greenland. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has expressed concerns about what threats the shield is meant to counter. He has also stated that Russia will carefully analyze these plans, with the military paying close attention to any developments. This comes against the backdrop of escalating military tensions between these two countries. Meanwhile, Peskov has also made it clear that Russia will never engage in discussions with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas and will simply wait for her to leave her post. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ben Aris. He's a former Moscow bureau chief of the Daily Telegraph, joins us live from Berlin. Thank you very much, Mr. Aris, for joining us. Good to see you. Now looking at this, what more can you tell us about this escalating situation, and also where the plans of U.S. is, including a lot of things, while world tries to hold on or grapples to what exactly is going on about their move towards Greenland.
There's two things going on as far as I can see.
Mr. Aris? Mr. Aris, over here we seem to have lost connection with... Okay, Mr. Aris,
I can hear you.
Okay,
yes.
I couldn't hear you. Please go on.
I'm sorry. So I was saying there's two things going on. At one level, Trump is running a foreign policy whereby he's trying to grab mineral concessions, particularly to critical minerals and to rare earth metals, because China has a monopoly on that. And strategically for the US, it means that China can simply turn off the US tech sector, and that's intolerable. And Greenland is home to significant, really significant deposits of critical minerals and particularly rare earth metals, which are key to technology. So he's trying to secure that, and he's doing it very aggressively by suggesting that he might invade the country. At the other end of the spectrum is the security issues, that the whole Arctic region is opening up for transport because of global warming and the decreasing amount of ice. In particular, Russia's been sending icebreakers, and they shorten the trip between Asia and Europe significantly by taking the northern route, so-called. At the same time, the US and Canada are interested in the same, and there's been talk of undersea Arctic fiber optic cables for data. So suddenly the Arctic region is becoming significantly more interesting or important from a security point of view. And the US has a deal with Greenland where it can put unlimited bases, unlimited men into the country. It used to have 17 bases. Now it only has one with about 600 people in it. And what Trump is proposing to do is to beef up that security. He's looking at northern Russia. He's looking at China. He's looking at securing the Arctic transport routes. But this comes with a severe problem, because if he beefs up the military there, that Russia's going to take that very badly. In the same way, even the suggestion that Ukraine might join NATO and put NATO missiles in on the border of European Russia, where 80% of the population live. If now Trump is going to put significant military assets into Greenland, which he can do under existing deals, then that's going to threaten Russia's very important northern transport route. And also, because Greenland is across from the middle, you have to realize Greenland is on Russia's northern border, that he can then fly missiles into Siberia, into deep part of Russia where they have a lot of strategic military bases, long-distance bombers, missile silos, all those sorts of things. So it will destabilize things even further in the relationship between Russia and America.
Right. And we saw the defense We saw the U.S.'s defense, security priorities shift this time. So what does this shift in U.S. Defense priorities suggest about the current, how do you think currently U.S. sees China and Russia?
Well, Trump is, he's taking a much more aggressive stance. The new national security strategy, which I think you're referring to, and the so-called Donroe Doctrine, he's aggressively saying that the whole Western Hemisphere belongs to the US. It's not a compromise. It's not a deal between equals. It's like the US is in charge and Trump will dictate to everyone else what to do. We just saw this with this so-called Peace Council that he's trying to set up, which basically observes the role of the UN as the international forum for working out global problems, and it's been there since 1945. And he's trying to set up a parallel organization, but notably, that organization is going to be chaired by Trump personally. He's going to keep a veto over any decisions. So again, he puts himself in charge. And his attitude or stance against Russia and China, who are sitting in this sense inside or just on the edge of his Western Hemisphere territory. He's talking about, in effect, putting up defenses, this Golden Dome missile defense system, in order to protect his hegemony in the Western Hemisphere. And I think neither China nor Russia will take that well. They've both been pushing for this multipolar world, and they've been pointing to the UN as a suitable organization. Xi Jinping has rejected the Peace Council. I don't think he's even been invited. Putin has been invited and is playing a game here about the $1 billion, and it should come from the frozen assets. And he also intends to do business with Trump if Trump wants to go down that road, which Trump has made very clear he does. So it's an evolving situation, but basically the old world order is broken, and we're now trying to work out a new world order, and this is one of the pieces in the puzzle.
So all in all, so what do you think, what is, from Trump's perspective, what is the most immediate threat for U.S.?
No, there's no threat. I mean, no one's going to attack it. I mean, their biggest threat is domestic. What we're seeing going on in Minnesota, there's a collapse of society with militarized police murdering people openly in the streets. And the idea that either Russia or China will attack America is insane. The need for the missile dome, I don't know, it's questionable. Both Russia and China have developed hypersonic missiles, which actually the Americans have no defense against, so maybe there is an argument for it. But he's reacting to he's creating a security threat by militarizing Greenland where there wasn't one before. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If he puts missile shield into Greenland, then he's going to need it because Russia will move missiles up to its northern border. But if he'd done nothing, there was no security threat there before. Neither China nor Russia have any interest in Greenland whatsoever. And so it all seems a bit unnecessary. But as I say, at the root of this, it's been driven by Trump's desire to get mineral concessions. And so he is going to move into Greenland, and it's just a question of how he does it. And with this suggestion of Golden Dome, then he's going to do it with a security backup, which will, as I said, destabilize things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aries, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to EU and Vietnam, an EU official has confirmed that European Council President Antonio Costa is set to visit Hanoi on 29 January to elevate the EU-Vietnam ties. This visit is significant as it comes shortly after Vietnam's top official To Lam was reappointed as General Secretary, making Costa potentially the first major leader to meet Lam since his reappointment. The upgraded ties, months in the making, are expected to place the EU on par with China, the US, and Russia in Vietnam's list of strategic partners. This move aligns with Vietnam's goal of balancing relations with major powers. However, while the upgrade signifies more frequent high-level meetings, it is largely symbolic and does not involve binding agreements. The visit follows strained US-Vietnam relations after the Trump administration imposed tariffs, despite improved ties between the two nations during former U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to Hanoi in 2023. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Aries. He's joining us live from Berlin. Thank you very much, Mr. Aries, for staying with us. What more can you tell us about this visit that's planned from EU? EU's delegation to Vietnam.
It's important. There's two things going on here. The first one is simply that because of the fundamental change in the way the EU economy is structured following the end of cheap Russian gas, they have a real problem now. They're deindustrializing, but suddenly the fundamental input cost of energy has doubled in the long term. And that makes all of their widgets and equipment and machines much more expensive. And that's it's already slowing down the economies. I mean, Germany used to be the strongest economy in Europe, and it's been in recession for 3 years because it's taken these energy costs on the nose. And moreover, Germany, its manufacturing share of its economy is something like 25-26%, which is at least 10% more than anybody else. And Germany has been deindustrializing. As a result of that, the chaos that was first in things like petrochemicals that use gas as a feedstock has spilled over into things like the automotive sector. So Volkswagen has just started closing plants in Germany for the first time in over 80 years of operations. And what the German companies are doing are they're decamping from Germany, where it's no longer economically viable to have a factory like that, and moving to emerging markets. And China is the obvious destination that's already taken in a massive amount of European investment, but because of geopolitical strains, the other countries, they're looking for alternatives. And Vietnam is very interesting. It's flourishing, it's coming along gangbusters. Its manufacturing share of GDP has gone shooting up because it's still a low-cost production center, but at the same time, because of the reforms and development, the skills of the workers has gone shooting up so they can do things like cars, which they couldn't do before. And the EU deal is to capitalize on that, to smooth the flow of European countries. The second part is simply, again, Trump and his aggressive tariff trade attacks on his partners and the downgrade that Europe has had from being an equal and a long-standing partner of the state to simply being a market, a vassal state, as far as Trump is concerned. Europe needs to diversify for geopolitical reasons too. It needs to break its dependence. And the US-Europe trade partnership, that's the biggest pair in the world. It's worth some $4.5 trillion a year. And 20% of European exports go to the States. And so they need to diversify, they need new markets, they need to reduce that dependence to give themselves alternatives. Otherwise, they're also over the barrel with tariffs. And we saw that already last March when von der Leyen met Trump, and Trump did this incredibly one-way deal where he imposed 15% tariffs on Europe, and Europe had no tariffs in the opposite direction, and effectively had to throw its markets open to US companies. And that's what this trade deal is about. And the Mercosur trade with Latin America, which is going on in parallel, is the same thing.
Thank you for sharing that all with us, Mr. Aries. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Italy. Swiss President Guy Parmelin has said that Rome's outrage is understandable over the release on bail of the owner of the bar where a deadly fire broke out on New Year Eve's day. But also added that magistrates act independently. This comes in response to Italy's reaction condemning the decision to release the bar owner, Jacques Moretti. A blaze that erupted early on January 1st in the bar crowded with teenagers in the Swiss ski resort of Crans-Montana, which killed 40 people, including 6 Italian nationals, and injured more than 100, a tragedy that has reverberated across Italy's media and public opinion. Now we move on to our space news. NASA has confirmed that the 4 Artemis II astronauts have officially entered pre-launch quarantine in Houston. The quarantine period limits close contact with the public and reduces the chance of infections that could delay the mission. NASA refers to the process as health stabilization rather than strict isolation. Crew members can still see family, friends, and colleagues who follow the same guidelines. Masks, distancing, and controlled environments are part of daily life during this phase. Although movement is restricted, the crew's work continues. Mission simulations, medical checks, and final reviews are still taking place. These activities are designed to keep skills sharp without introducing unnecessary risk. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.